How are we doing, everyone? It's the Shoal Weekly Podcast with Ben.
Hi, guys.
And we've got Charlie as well, as always.
Hello.
Do be sure to follow our socials for updates and news. Please hit that notification bell, drop us a like or a follow. We really appreciate your support. I've been really looking forward to this episode this week. If you've been following along on our socials, you know that we've been anxious to talk about the highly anticipated season finale of WandaVision on Disney+. I managed to catch it this morning. I know you guys did as well. We were talking about it all day, trying not to talk about it too much to save some good content for the podcast.
I was just to say, Joe, you sound very nice today.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I had a bit of an upgrade. Nice microphone sent to me by a supporter. And also, you know, I paid for everything, clearly, with all the royalties we get.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Use the Shoal business account. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. The Shoal American Express card.
That's a really...
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to actually sound studio quality. We should probably mention that this episode of the podcast, we are going to be doing a deep dive into a lot of spoilers for the MCU. Big spoilers in particular for Avengers Infinity War, Endgame, Captain Marvel. So if you don't want those spoiled, obviously do go and check out those films and the entire run of WandaVision on Disney Plus right now, and make sure you come straight back and listen to our breakdown. We won't be going too heavy into spoilers at the start. We're just going to be having a chat about the MCU in general and what we kind of thought about the series overall. If you do want to listen to the full spoiler breakdown, we will post a timestamp in the YouTube description for you once everything's been edited. So, guys, I mean, what else have you been watching this week? It's been quite a busy week, I know.
Keeping on the MCU vein of thought, I watched Endgame finally after about 2 years, however long it's been. God, it's just not as good as Infinity War. You know, like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching Infinity War with you, and I remember you not being as impressed with that as well either. But I know, Charlie, you have quite a strong opinion about superhero films in general.
Yeah, but what I liked about Infinity War is they actually lost. Like there's actual danger to it. Like,
yeah,
they never lose because obviously they're superheroes. That's the point. I get it, but like, to actually lose, it was a refreshing take on the whole thing. And then they just come back and it's all fine. Spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
Would you believe it?
It's the MCU. At the end of the day, I think there's always going to be an outcome that, like, most people are happy with.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't... The only thing I think about those last two Infinity War films was they did tee it up. So it wasn't just like... You know, like, sometimes it's really jarring when there's like this whole film and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, like they just can't die because there's plot armor or something like that. With Endgame, I think they did tee it up. So I wasn't, like, I get your point, but at the same time, I didn't really care because I wanted them all to win.
Yeah. Obviously, that is the end game. They win. Mm-hmm. But it's a bit boring for me. Like, I know they're going to win. Like, it's not very refreshing. The way they did it isn't very refreshing. It's not very new. But yeah. Mm-hmm. What have you been watching, Joe?
I actually watched Godzilla this week. I was in the mood.
In preparation for the King Kong Godzilla
Yeah,
film.
I guess so. And also, I find it's got quite a lot of rewatchability. It's not the most sort of perfect film, nor is it deep, but I think it's a great disaster film, and I think whilst it's really not perfect and it's got some pacing issues, there's just something so awesome about seeing a gigantic lizard tearing it through like cities. And you know, I've got a soft spot for those big sort of kaiju disaster movies like Pacific Rim, King Kong. I just think they're kind of mindless fun, and they've never really offended anyone. So
a bit like the MCU.
Yeah, well. Oh. What about you, Ben?
This week I watched the third installment, part 3, film 3 of To All the Boys I Loved Before, which is on Netflix. Yeah, it was pretty much copy paste from the first and the second films, so nothing unexpected. Very much the same issues, just rehashed. But it was fun. Very easy. Didn't really offend too much, and yeah, just quite a nice film.
I've only seen the first one, but I remember it being like it's just a general sort of. It's nice to watch, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, very
Yeah.
easy. I think it's kind of just it's difficult to explain. Maybe it kind of is just like a romance film that they just kind of keep prolonging, like they keep adding more to like this saga of this relationship. And yeah, I mean it's just a kind of modern day rom-com. It's good, it's entertaining, it's funny.
I mean, I'm going to put it out there. There's a lot of things on Netflix that they are just milking and just won't let die. I mean, look at how long 13 Reasons Why went on for. That went on for 4 seasons.
Did it? Fucking hell.
Yeah.
What the hell?
4 seasons.
I watched the first one and then gave up.
Yeah.
That's mad.
Well, I watched it. I enjoyed the first season. It was very
Yeah.
on the nose, but I enjoyed it. And then as soon as I heard the premise of season 2, I was like, nah,
Not the one.
absolutely not. So, lads, I mean, it seems like we've watched a lot of inoffensive, rather background noise kind of things this week. But you know what? Sometimes that's a welcome change because we've been watching a lot of deep stuff recently, and
Good distraction from the chaos of the world.
I think so.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I mean, let's have a chat about the MCU, shall we? Because I know a lot of listeners have requested a few films for us to check out or to break down, but I think we're going to save that for some kind of big superhero festival at some point in the future. Today we're just going to narrow it down a little bit. Yeah, so obviously if you're a big fan of the MCU or if you're just getting into it, it's this chronicle of the Avengers essentially, and it's a very interconnected universe. And this is the first year in which Disney, who now owns Marvel, has done a load of spin-off shows. I know it's not the first time we've seen Marvel spin-off shows. We have seen things like Daredevil and Luke Cage on Netflix.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was that one?
Yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. They are a bit difficult to sort of tie into the mainstream MCU. There was one time in which they were very much canon, and now the question as to whether they're canon or not is very up in the air. However, it's very clear that Disney is now committed to keeping its entire continuity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe exclusive to Disney Plus. You're not going to have to go searching on Netflix or ABC or anything like that, or Sky for anything MCU related. It's all in one place. And recently, if you've been catching up with the main movies, you'll know that the end of the Infinity Saga happened, which was the collection of the first 3 phases of the MCU. Endgame was a huge turning point for the MCU, and it left a lot of people feeling as though what is there left to see? What does the MCU have to offer? And it's left a lot of things up in the air, and it's also kind of made things very interesting, mainly just because how do you top Endgame? Really. And in the wake of Endgame, they announced so many spin-off shows. One of them is WandaVision, which pretty much recounts the tale of Wanda Maximoff, who is a superhero. She's an Avenger, dealing with the loss of her lover, who's this synthezoid called the Vision. This is essentially a story about grief and how you process grief, and essentially Wanda trying to find her way through a very strange post-Endgame MCU world without her lover to help her. So it's definitely a very personal story, but essentially what WandaVision is Wanda has constructed this fabricated reality in which Vision is still alive, and each week it's been visiting very different eras of television. So the first episode is purely in black and white. It's in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and it evokes those kind of aesthetics of something like the Dick Van Dyke Show. And slowly over the weeks, the eras of television have changed, and I think last week was supposed to be a spoof on Modern Family. So you had Wanda breaking the fourth wall and talking to us, and it's a great mystery show, and we're going to talk more about spoilers later, but I think I'd just like to get your first impressions, guys, about how you felt about the show. It felt very fresh.
Can I just say how mental explaining the MCU is to someone that doesn't know what it is?
I know. I
Like,
was really struggling then.
if you don't know what anything in Marvel is, you are Infinity
Mhm,
Stones. Oh yeah, they're just stones that have magic in them. It's like, all right, that's is mad.
It
mhm.
kind of makes you realize though how good all the films are leading up to I generally I think they're all really good films because the amount of information that actually is at the end, and then you realize where all that information is like trickled down from. Like one of the great things about Marvel is that there's so many recurring themes, like patterns. Like for example, Jimmy Woo in WandaVision is this FBI agent, bit of a side character really, but he was also a side character in Ant-Man, and some of the specifically some of the magic that basically he was like amazed at in Ant-Man is like card magic. He's like whipping out in the TV series.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
One of the really cool things is you can see how characters like are evolving over. I mean, when was Ant-Man? Like 3 years ago, maybe 4. So it's
Yeah, I
like.
think 2015 for the first Ant-Man, and then we had the sequel in between Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah, so 6 years ago, there's now in the space of 6 years, you can kind of relate to that character and how he's like. You can see even like the side characters got this development. Um, yeah, I think I personally really I loved WandaVision. I thought it was really epic. One of the things that really kind of not like stuck with me, but one of the things with Endgame was um basically in Endgame, there's like a 5 year period where half the population is missing before the Avengers can kind of save the world. And at the end of the film, um, that's not really answered. Like it's just kind of they kind of there's a classic superhero film ending, and everything is saved and the bad guys beat, but they don't really deal with this 5 year period. It was just kind of like we got to see the survivors through it, but then when everyone comes back, there's no we didn't get to see anything handled. And I think this is the first piece of anything from the Marvel universe where they actually handle that. And I think it was interesting. We get to see Wanda's, or we finally, I think we only really got to see it in like episode 8 out of 9. Wanda's kind of reaction to that. But we also got to see, Captain Rambo's reaction to coming back. And there was there was that hospital scene where everyone's like screaming because there's people appearing that haven't been seen for 5 years, and I really liked how it actually handled that. And I think it answers your question as well. How do you follow on from Endgame? Well, okay, let's handle the fallout for that. And
Is
I
it the
think,
blip? Did you call it?
yeah, the
Mm.
blip.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
They briefly show it in quite a comedic way in Spider-Man: Far From Home. It was the first film. Yeah, the first film set after Endgame. And you see footage like stock footage or like recorded newsreels of people coming back when in Endgame the Hulk manages to successfully bring everyone back using using the Infinity Stones. And in Spider-Man, it's kind of handled in a comedic way. Oh, look at this. Oh, that seventh grade kid is now in like the 11th grade. Like, oh, he's really hot now, and there's such like a funny way to
Yeah.
look at it. But I really liked how WandaVision took Monica Rambeau, who in Captain Marvel was a child, and if you've seen that film, you'll be familiar with her mother, to wake up and find out that her mother died of cancer whilst she was essentially non-existent, and to come back to that. I think it was it's starting to show the consequences of the Endgame war, basically between the Avengers and Thanos, and I really liked seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely like kind of because there was quite a lot of towards the end of that first chapter of the MCU with the Infinity Stones and everything. There was in particular Civil War, Captain America Civil War, where there's this kind of battle between are the superheroes right or wrong? Are they kind of good or bad? And I think this kind of the fallout of this kind of it keeps that conversation going, and there's definitely themes, which I'm sure we're going to get into with WandaVision, where it's, actually, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at good or are we looking at evil? And I think it was really interesting to see that continue.
One thing that WandaVision does well, because we said about Spider-Man taking it, the blip is a more comedic like technique, but I think WandaVision also sort of balances between it. Obviously, not with the blip, but there's very funny moments in the series, like the whole sitcom not being real thing is like there's so many funny moments within that.
No, yeah, totally. You're right with that. And I think it was really fresh to see kind of how that was explained. I mean, I wish that I'd watched them with a week in between, because now looking back, I watched them quite close after each other. Actually, there was so many. I mean, I think for the first 4 episodes, it doesn't really make sense as like a larger TV show, and I think it would have been really interesting to feel what that was like to kind of hang on, what the hell's going on here? This isn't anything like what we've watched in Marvel before. Like, I've just watched 2 characters that I know are like from the 21st century in like the 1950s. So it's really interesting to see how they did that.
Yeah, I think it was a very playful show, and the first 2 episodes really reminded me of something like The Twilight Zone or something, by like
Yeah.
David Lynch. It had that Twin Peaks vibe, and this is where I get a little bit conflicted looking back over WandaVision, because it feels like a show that arrived at the right time for the MCU. At the start of this uncharted territory, where do we go from Endgame? It's such a huge stepping off point. And I feel like in that regard, it came at the right time because it was strange, it's weird, it's fascinating, it's creepy, it's mysterious, and it's something that we've never seen before. However, in the context of the wider sort of storyline of the MCU, and especially if perhaps you've read some of the source material, I feel like WandaVision came almost at the wrong time as well, because we're sort of on the precipice of introducing the X-Men to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you're not familiar with the X-Men, they are just another group of superheroes. Previously, they've only been made into film by 20th Century Fox, so Disney never had the rights to them. But now, since Disney owns 20th Century Fox, they are within their right to have those characters back in the mainstream Marvel continuity. And there was many times watching it over the past sort of 7 or 8 weeks that I really thought the WandaVision was going to be a really great way for the MCU to introduce the mutants, or the X-Men as they're called. Because you look at Monica Rambeau, who she becomes a superhero halfway through the series, and kind of follows in her mum's best friend's footsteps, Captain Marvel's footsteps. And it's all because of exposure to Wanda's power. And then you take into consideration that Wanda also got her power from the Infinity Stone. It was unlocked by the Infinity Stone, but it was always in her DNA. All of those things are very kind of, the mutants exist in the MCU. But one very large thing that happens in the comics is a storyline called the House of M, which this is quintessentially an adaptation of. There's no denying it. In the comics, Wanda she can't have children with Vision because he's a synthezoid. So she creates her children, Tommy and Billy, using her chaos magic. Years later, the demon Mephisto returns to take the children because it turns out that they are part of his soul and that it was a trick. Her magic was nothing more than like a facade. And this was all because of Agatha Harkness as well, who's a witch, who does appear in the show. And in her madness, she essentially ends up killing Hawkeye and Ant-Man and Vision in the comics. It's quite a dark comic. And to save her from killing anyone else, her father Magneto and Professor X from the X-Men, they lock her in her own mind essentially. And that storyline is then called the House of M. And within her own mind, she is free to do what she wants. Vision is still alive. She can still have her children. And at the end of House of M, she goes so insane when she realizes that she's trapped in her own mind that she wipes out 95% of the mutants in the Marvel comics. She kills 95% of the mutant gene. And in the comics, that's called M Day, which is, it's quite a harrowing, prolific day in the continuity. And my theory for WandaVision was that they were going to pull a reverse House of M to introduce the mutants into the show, into the MCU. In that, I was so convinced that the hex was going to be sort of spread all across the world, and that in Wanda's madness and becoming the Scarlet Witch, she would essentially create the mutants for the MCU. So there was a lot of things that made me think this has come at the right time and it's very refreshing, but in the sense of the story, I think it was a little bit hit and miss, because I wanted more. I wanted more from it. I wanted more this was the first chapter of a brand new phase of the MCU. And it still kind of felt more like an epilogue for Endgame. Especially the last couple of episodes, really, as opposed to going in a new direction.
That was my, because I really, really enjoyed the first few, and then it got less weird as it went on. It got less of a spoof of the TV shows it was imitating, and it should have stuck with being the arty weird thing of the MCU rather than just being another bit of the MCU. Do you know what I mean?
I get that they had to explain it, of course, but yeah, I see what you mean. The ending. Well, I mean, we're not going to go into that right now.
Yeah.
For spoilers, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But it's nice that Marvel are able to commit to stranger corners of the Marvel universe now that they're really established. But I still feel like they're playing it safe, because I'm not sure. If you follow the kind of fandom on places like TikTok, there are people who are only just becoming fans of the MCU now.
Yeah.
Because of those kind of social media sites. And they haven't got a clue about the other, 23 films yet. I've spoken to loads of people the past few weeks who have basically just said, I've only ever seen WandaVision. I haven't seen anything else in the MCU. Should I go back and catch up?
Wow.
Yes.
Have we missed it all?
I know.
What the hell?
So, yeah, and I think the first sort of 4 or 5 episodes of the show is for those kind of new fans. It's this weird Twilight Zone, David Lynch-esque strange thing. And it's okay if you don't know who Vision is. It's okay if you don't know who Wanda is, because the mystery is going to unravel. But as the mystery unravels, you realize that you need to be a hardcore MCU fan to kind of get a lot of the stuff. Or unless you're going to be reading Wikipedia all night.
I think maybe that was on purpose, because they could have. I think they definitely could have gone further. Like you said, they definitely played it safe, and I think that is on purpose, because at the end of the day, they're looking for this to be a success, and then they can tee up the next thing. I think Marvel has a storied history of basically being built on, the later films, the later storyline is built on the success of the film, of the show, that's out right now, or the latest one. So I think it's definitely important that this one works, and I think if they went too far and made it so that only die-hard Marvel fans would enjoy it, I think they would have lost a lot of people, because you got to remember, I'm sure there's loads, there's a whole generation has been raised on these films and on the previous, 26 films, whatever it is now. But at the same time, they still need to pull more people in. So if somebody hasn't watched all of those films, like you said, the first half of the series is fine. Like, they can get into it, they can enjoy it, they can appreciate it, and then as it starts to get more complex, thinking, well, hang on, I want to know who this is, I want to know what that is about, and then at that point, you can kind of capture them and reel them in. And considering the fact that Disney Plus is such a great platform and all of those films are available on it, they can go away and read up on
it. Just going back to your thing about mutants, Joe. Wasn't that explained in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Weren't they mutants, or one of them was, like the main character?
Yeah, so this is where those sort of spin-off shows that originated around the same time as the first and second Avengers films kind of fall into this strange grey area. back when the Avengers first came out, as in the first team up film, that film was distributed by Paramount instead of Disney. And it wasn't until Disney acquired Marvel Studios that they wanted to keep things a little tighter. But what had happened is Joss Whedon, who had directed the first Avengers film, basically had this idea to do an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. spin-off series, which was quite successful for quite a while. And also, Marvel had sold some rights to some characters for Netflix as well. So on Netflix, we got Daredevil, Daredevil and Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, whereas ABC Studios got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter as well, which is Captain America's love interest.
Punisher was on Netflix as well.
Oh yeah, Punisher, that came a little bit later, yeah. And essentially the head of the Marvel Studios at Disney, his name's Kevin Feige. I'm sure if people are fans of the MCU, you'll know his name very well. Kevin Feige, whenever he's asked about those shows that originated around the same time as the first Avengers film, he always kind of acknowledges how great they were, but he never acknowledges that they're canon. And this is kind of sad for a lot of fans who enjoyed those shows, and especially, say, the Netflix shows who were more targeted at mature audiences. You know, Daredevil was incredibly brutal and bloody.
Daredevil was mint.
It was amazing. And then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in its later seasons also got quite brutal as well and quite dark. And essentially, as it stands right now, those shows are kind of not canon. Then they're not acknowledged by Disney, purely because Disney is very focused on family-friendly content for the MCU, and they want to keep the MCU family-friendly. So I think Kevin Feige is wrestling a lot with Disney over trying to include some of those shows that were made by other production companies, essentially. And I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. we have to say goodbye to. It's never going to be canon. It's never going to come back. It was imagined in this sort of pocket universe, sort of stitched to the side of the MCU, but not really the MCU, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. gave up trying to reference the movies after season 2.
Yeah, it went too far.
Yeah.
It went too far, and it was great. It was great to watch. It was really enjoying. But yeah, it definitely went too far to kind of come back. And I think if I remember correctly, do they even call them mutants in the films? Because I don't think they actually had the rights to call them mutants at that point, did they?
Yeah, no. So the word they used was Inhumans.
Yeah.
So just a very, very simple explanation. So the Inhumans are another race of humans that were created via extraterrestrial origins. So a very long time ago, I think it was a race of beings called the Eternals, which I think Thanos is very closely related to in the comics. They came down to Earth and experimented with humans, and they then became the Inhumans. So they were essentially superheroes of extraterrestrial biological origin, separate from the mutants, who are just normal humans but born with a mutant sort of gene in their body. But yeah, You're quite right. Because of 20th Century Fox owning the rights to all of the X-Men characters and their kind of connected characters, Disney and Marvel weren't allowed to use the word mutant in any TV or movie productions. So it means that when they introduced Wanda and Pietro Maximoff in Age of Ultron, they weren't allowed to call them mutants. They were just supernatural, or they were enhanced beings, that kind of thing. But if you're a fan of the comics, you'll know full well Pietro and Wanda Maximoff are the son and daughter of Magneto, Eric Lenscher, who is the primary antagonist of the X-Men.
How do you think they'll combat that when it comes to it? Or will they?
So yeah, this is something that I wanted to. Obviously, I touched on it before in that I really thought the season finale of WandaVision. We may as well go ahead and say now we're going to talk about the finale.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to hear
spoilers now,
yeah, spoilers from here on out. So essentially, the finale of WandaVision played it safe in that all's well that ends well. Scarlet Witch, Wanda becomes the Scarlet Witch. She gets rid of her spell. She ends the hex. Sadly, she had to say goodbye.
Really hated that line when she was like, "Oh, you're the Scarlet Witch," and I was like, "Oh my god." Like, yes, we know. Like, it just really annoys me.
I
Shit
mean,
like that.
that was never used in the films before. That's the first time she's ever been referenced as the Scarlet Witch, and I kind of like it. In the comics, that was always her name, but I like how in the MCU they've now made the Scarlet Witch more of like a legend, which is kind of cool. So I did like, but yeah, it was a bit of a corny line. But essentially, my theory for the finale was going to be that the Scarlet Witch was going to expand the Hex, and because of what the Hex did to Monica Rambeau, it awoke her mutant gene and turned her into this new superhero. I thought that was going to happen as well. I thought that essentially it was going to be a reverse M Day from the House of M storyline, and the mutants were going to be woken up. Essentially, that DNA inside some mutants, for example, Professor X, Charles Xavier, he could just be a normal professor working at Oxford University. And then Wanda expands the Hex, and then all of a sudden he has the power to read minds like he does in the comics. It would have made so much sense. But obviously the show played it very safe. And I think that it's still going to be a long time before we see the X-Men, unfortunately. And I think one of the things that really annoyed me about the show was the inclusion of Evan Peters as this Ralph character, this fake Pietro Maximoff. If you're familiar with the Fox X-Men franchise, you'll know that Evan Peters played Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, as he's known by his superhero name, in X-Men Days of Future Past and X-Men Apocalypse and X-Men Dark Phoenix. And everyone was so excited when he showed up at the door a few weeks ago at the end of that episode. And they were thinking, here we go, this is it. This is Wanda messing with the multiverse. She's just brought the wrong brother from the wrong reality into her reality. And it's amazing. And what did we get? We got a boner joke. His name's Ralph Boner. And I think that was very cheap. Kind of reminded me of Iron Man 3 when the Mandarin wasn't really the Mandarin. He was just some scout played by Ben Kingsley. So I think that's a little bit cheap. And I think that's Kevin Feige's way of saying the X-Men are coming, but we just wanted the views, really, which it's a shame because that's kind of shit marketing. But
they're getting dollar in, so they don't care.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think it will be good though, because I think if there's one thing I think that the Marvel universe has done so far, which it has a single focus at any one time. There's always something. There's always one issue at the fore. So at the start it was Iron Man and kind of introducing superheroes gently to the audience, to the world, to the universe, the fictional universe, and then it became about here are all the background stories, here are all the new ones, and then it very much became the focus became are the superheroes here for good? Are they here for bad? How can they save the day and make sure that can be held accountable, all that stuff. And then it very much was the end of days is coming, we're all going to die, we need the Avengers to help everything. I think what we can already say from the upcoming films, so we've got Spider-Man, we've got the Doctor Strange 2, which we know already are going to be handling the multiverse. I think whilst I think we want them to introduce the X-Men at this point, and the fact that they teased it a little bit, I think they're going to focus on the multiverse. And I think I know you could add the X-Men in at that point, but I think adding them in right now, it's just it's like we would have two different things going off at the same time.
It's a lot as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's a lot
all
of content.
Those characters.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the X-Men, there's so much story there in its own right. And we've got Deadpool 3 coming as well soon, I think. Isn't that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one to talk about because obviously Deadpool, very famously an R-rated comic book film that a lot of people find very funny, and it's very meta, very fourth wall breaking.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to report that Kevin Feige has said that Deadpool 3, even though it will be part of Marvel Studios instead of Fox this time, it still will be R-rated.
Yeah, that's going to be epic.
It will be great. He did say don't get excited about anything else being R-rated. I think he just said that Deadpool 3 will be, which kind of annoys me because you've got things like Blade coming up as well. Mahershala Ali very great actor. He was in Moonlight. He's going to be playing Blade, who's the vampire hunter. If you're familiar with Blade at all, you'll know Wesley Snipes played him in a trilogy in the early 2000s, late 90s, and all three of those films were 18 plus. Because, he's a vampire hunter. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So it'd be weird to see them squeeze all of that adult content into something that's PG-13 or 12A.
So is Deadpool part of the MCU?
Yes and no. He's not part of the
Yeah.
MCU that we've seen.
Right.
But obviously, going forward with this whole multiverse and the X-Men, I think he's very much going to be part of it. Because so if you're not clued up on Deadpool's origin, for anybody listening, Deadpool basically he wasn't necessarily a mutant to start with. He was just this kind of soldier that was like insanely gifted, and then I think he got his he was always kind of like this really like larger than life soldier. Like it was like, how could a normal human do this? But basically he got cancer, right? And then essentially signed up to this like rogue experimentation, and essentially he was turned into a mutant. And it was inside. So originally it was kind of in his own. Like it's weird. The 2000s
Again,
in
it's
X-Men
sort of that
are
unlocking.
like,
It's like unlocking that mutant gene again. It's but yeah,
So Deadpool and the X-Men are in one universe.
Yeah,
I'd say so.
Are they gonna? Because the X-Men, some of the X-Men are in Deadpool, aren't they?
Yeah, they
Like
had a
the
bit of a
characters.
crossover.
Yeah,
Kind of like this, because basically they kind of introduced Deadpool as a character, and then what they did is, because that film and the way they introduced him was like, let's be honest, it was dreadful. What they basically did was kind of like drew a line under it and restarted with him, and it did him again, and I would say you've got to say like they got it right. I think the fact that Disney are willing to compromise and keep his category, his storyline R-rated, definitely tells you that. Because as great as Disney is in funding this and kind of creating the universe, I know it's obviously still Marvel Studios, but they're basically, at the end of the day, they're funding it and they're backing it. The fact they're still continuing that R-rated theme is epic, because it's definitely it's my favorite superhero film for sure. It's just hilarious. And
well, I think also Deadpool, he's this fourth wall breaking character. If anything, you could suggest that his superpower is that he can see beyond this kind of fourth wall that we as spectators peer into. And if anything, I think that's going to be a benefit for his translation to the Disney side, to the MCU, because if you've seen the first two Deadpool movies, he makes a lot of in-jokes about, the fact that Professor X has been played by both Patrick Stewart and James McAvoy. He makes a joke about it. He also makes a joke, when the same two X-Men that were in the first Deadpool movie show up in the second movie, and they're like, it's almost like the studio couldn't afford another X-Man. And all those kind of jokes. So I wouldn't be surprised if when we see Deadpool 3, the film starts with him, with wearing some Disney Mickey Mouse ears and being like, holy shit, where am I?
Yeah.
I'd love to see a Deadpool Guardians of the Galaxy crossover.
That would be insane.
That would be amazing.
I always think that Deadpool will always exist sort of on the sideline to everything, as kind of like a commentator, as like a really funny sports commentator.
Yeah.
He's not. He's never going to be in like an Avengers team up film.
No.
Like he'll never be that. I mean, to be honest, if they did that, I think that would be like crazy. Like it'd be hilarious. But he would never be a central character, because he's that He's definitely
too
the
meta.
relief.
He breaks that in the narrative. He breaks the narrative. But I can definitely imagine him in Deadpool 3 time traveling back to the events of Avengers Endgame and being like holy shit, look at all the portals.
I can imagine him just like messing with shit and just being
exactly.
putting one little thing wrong just to mess with someone. That'd be great.
So, I mean, I guess going back to how they're going to introduce the X-Men, I think it's going to be a mixture of both recasting and establishing that some of the X-Men are already within the Marvel Universe. Their genes haven't been unlocked. And then I also think, based on the fact that the next two big Marvel movies, Spider-Man 3, I forget the new subtitle that it's got.
No Way Home, isn't it?
That's something like that. Yeah. And then also Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Big clue.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck's sake.
I think it's a great title. I think
so on the nose though.
I know, but I think based on that and based on some of the casting rumors for Spider-Man: No Way Home, I think that introducing the X-Men is going to be a slow process, but it's going to be one in which there's going to be some mutants that are already in this universe, and then some mutants are going to come over from the Fox universe, i.e., maybe some of the younger ones or something like that. We won't. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think we'll see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine ever again. He doesn't want to play the role anymore. So likely Wolverine in the Avengers or the MCU will likely come from within. But say Sophie Turner, who plays Jean Grey in the X-Men films, the younger Jean Grey, I can see her coming across the multiverse. And I guess we'll see, clearly something is going wrong with the multiverse because of the events of WandaVision, and that's going to have some impact on Doctor Strange too. And then with all these very strange casting rumors surrounding Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are apparently in the movie.
That's going to be amazing anyway.
Yeah. It's already been confirmed that Jamie Foxx, who played Electro in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is from the Sony Marvel universe, which is just another thing entirely. There's like 3 main Marvel movie universes. Jamie Foxx's Electro is confirmed to be in Tom Holland's MCU Spider-Man. It's crazy.
I've forgotten what it's called. The animated one.
Into the Spider-Verse, yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse, yeah. Because that would be awesome to see that come into it as well. Is there any rumors on that?
I'm not too sure. The only thing that currently is a bit of a rumor is when Tom Holland posted the whiteboard of all of the possible names for Spider-Man 3, the shape of the logo is in the same shape of Puerto Rico, which is where Miles Morales is originally from.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
because that'd be amazing.
I think it would. Yeah.
It's
a very exciting time for the future of the MCU, and I think WandaVision was a nice breath of fresh air. Even if it did kind of return to those kind of typical roots for the last couple of episodes.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to definitely talk about is the kind of offshoots that we've got. So particularly we got 2 end credit scenes. In typical Marvel fashion, the credits appeared and there was still 10 minutes of the episode left.
I went through every single credits on every single episode because I was like, there's going to be something. It's just on the last one. I was like, fuck's sake.
Yeah, no, there was definitely. I definitely did exactly the same thing. But so we got 2 credit scenes in the finale. The first one was to do with Captain Rambo, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was somebody. It looked a bit like the Captain Marvel. I can't remember what they call that force of peacekeepers.
Wasn't
Kree
at the end of Spider-Man: Far From Home? But isn't it where Nick Fury is? Because haven't they disguised as him to come down? That's spoiler for that film, but
yeah. So essentially, Captain Marvel a few years ago introduced the Skrulls, which are quite a prominent race in the comics. They famously have been at war with the Kree, who are another race. So we actually see in Guardians of the Galaxy as well, the blue people. I think Yondu is a Kree.
Oh, right.
They've been at war for a very long time, and essentially the Skrulls are shapeshifters, and they cause a very significant storyline in the comics called Secret Invasion, in which after the events of Civil War in the comics and Captain America is dead, they infiltrate the heroes and turn them against each other. And at the end, as you're quite right, at the end of Far From Home, we do see the leader of the Skrulls, Talos. He emerges that he's actually, he's been disguised as Nick Fury for the whole film, and that the real Nick Fury is up on this space station. And spoilers, obviously, for the end of WandaVision. In the post-credit scene, we see one of the the FBI agents turning into a Skrull, which is kind of just tells me that they're building up to that Secret Invasion storyline. I do know that Disney Plus are working on a Secret Invasion TV show with Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. So I think
at this point, are they quite friendly? Because I'm guessing Nick Fury isn't being held there against his will. It doesn't look like it at the end of that film, anyway.
It showed them in a good light, the Captain Marvel film. But my knowledge of the comic books is that they were quite a vicious shape-shifting race, and they infiltrated quite heavily. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I think
It's a weird time, like, because before this, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not got in-depth knowledge, but everything has been based in sort of reality, and now everything's getting confused. Like Mysterio in Spider-Man, you've got Wanda creating a reality for herself in this one, and now these alien people coming and changing identities. I like it. It's you're gonna have to second guess when you're watching it from now on. I think.
I think
as
so.
to
Yeah.
if people are real or not, or who they say they are.
I think, yeah, I mean, the tagline for the Secret Invasion storyline in the comics was, who can you trust?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the case. I definitely didn't see it coming in Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of saw it coming in WandaVision. I kind of had a feeling that one of them was a Skrull because so many of the Sword agents were just weird. I mean, look at Director Hayward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to sidestep for a second and talk about Hayward. In that, I really thought that he was gonna be more of a villain. I know he was a bit of a dick.
Yeah,
but
I thought he was going to be the main villain and be like,
yeah,
I really didn't like the other witch. I just thought that, I don't know.
Oh, I
Well,
really liked her.
yeah. Agatha Harkness has a strange history in the comic books. For the most part, she's Wanda's mentor and teaches her how to use her chaos magic. But she's heavily involved with the demon Mephisto, and Agatha is kind of the reason why the House of M happens, because she takes her children off her and gives them back to Mephisto's soul. It was a very dark time for the comic storyline there, and yeah, I liked the performance in the show, and I thought it was a good reveal, a good twist, and essentially I think Agatha Harkness was there purely for the birth of Scarlet Witch, because they're allowed to use that name now. It's no longer Fox's property. They can say Scarlet Witch. So I kind of feel a little bit disappointed that Agatha wasn't fleshed out more, but maybe we'll see her again. Who knows?
Oh,
But
100%.
yeah.
They left that open.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that discussion is kind of part of the greater discussion, which is essentially is the Scarlet Witch. I think I'm going to say Scarlet Witch on purpose, not Wanda. Is the Scarlet Witch actually good, or is she going to be a little bit evil, maybe for a time, or is she going to actually be fully evil? Because there's that bit where at the end when she's beat Agatha, and Agatha's like, she's kind of like, Wanda or Scarlet Witch is kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, or whatever, and then she's like, no, you're not, you love it, and you see the Scarlet Witch smirk, and you're like, whoa, hang on a second, like that's kind of like a little bit almost psychotic. Like you've just kind of shown us that other side that you never really see from this hero type character, and then obviously she traps her and kind of robs her of her abilities and her own free will, and says, I'm going to see you again whenever the hell I want. Which then takes us on to the next end scene credit, which is the Scarlet Witch sitting in a log cabin in some crazy remote location, probably in where are they from again?
Arcovia.
Sarkovia. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sarkovia. And it appears that she's just chilled out, she's having a cup of tea and whatever. Actually, no, that's an illusion. She's in the back and she's got her hands deep inside the kind of the book of dark chaos magic that Agatha basically had, and she's learning, and there's symbols, and you can tell, I think you can tell there's a lot of ominous, there's just with the colors used, it's all black and dark red, and it's very broody, and I think have
you seen Watchmen? Has anyone here seen Watchmen?
Seen like the film or the series?
Either. It's
Right.
what I'm going to say is it's very Dr. Manhattan at the end of that. She's just there, just creating reality. I think it's going to relate very heavily to the second Doctor Strange film. I mean, Agatha Harkness mentions to Scarlet Witch and says, "You're more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme."
Yeah. That kind of mention doesn't get, that's a huge name drop.
Mm-hmm.
That's I
And
think
I'm
that
pretty
that in
sure.
itself was.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm not. Well, I think some eagle-eyed fan might have to correct me on this one, but I'm pretty sure that the Darkhold book might be from the Camotage library in Doctor Strange.
Right.
I think a few weeks ago I saw a screenshot from the first Doctor Strange movie that basically showed an empty spot in the forbidden section in Doctor Strange, like it was a book missing.
That's cool.
So I hope maybe likely they'll tie that in and just say, Doctor Strange 2 is going to start off with Stephen Strange trying to hunt down the Darkhold.
Just to finish that off, obviously at the very last second of that scene, we hear one of the children that Wanda created in her madness. We hear that child's cry again, and obviously she reacts to that. So I think there's definitely they've kind of left Wanda in this left the Wanda / the Scarlet Witch at this point where she's still kind of the character we know, which is she's lonely, she's sad, she's got so much grief, so much pain, but she's also got so much power. It's like we've seen it referred to in previous Avengers films. Like with Tony Stark, Iron Man, he's like she's the most dangerous thing that could happen. Like she has to be kept safe and hidden and sheltered. And we're starting to see that, despite his best efforts, now that he's no longer around to kind of keep an eye on it, she's gone down this path that he feared. But it'll be interesting because, yeah, like I said, they've left it in this point where she could be evil, and she could be evil in her own right. But I think they've also given her like this lifeline of actually her children are being held against her will, and could she be manipulated from that point? So yeah, it's definitely going to make Doctor Strange 2 really interesting, just from her perspective.
I think it would be great for her character and also great for Vision's character as well if she does become the main antagonist of Doctor Strange 2. I think it would make a lot of sense. I think she seemed kind of okay to say goodbye to her fabricated, created husband and children at the end of the show, but beneath all that, I still think there's a lot of hysteria and uncertainty. And like she said, she doesn't understand her powers. And if anything, the only person that can really teach her how to use her powers for good is now someone like Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
And I think if she becomes the villain of Doctor Strange 2, that could lead to that giant House of M moment in which, maybe we'll see the creation of the mutants in that film. Obviously, with a bigger budget. Maybe they were saving it for a bigger budget. Who knows? But I think that would also be great for Vision's character as well, because
is he still alive?
I think we'll talk about that in a second because there's a lot to say. Okay. But yeah, I think it would be a good service for his character arc as well, even though he's gone. That because he was the only person that could talk to Wanda and they understood each other because they both came from the Mind Stone, really. They had this really innate connection. And now that he's gone for real completely, as in like her idea of him and his own idea of himself, now that that's gone, the idea of Vision, there's nothing to stop her from becoming completely unhinged. And we got a glimpse of that in Endgame as well, when she comes face to face with Thanos and tells him that he's taken everything from her. And if it weren't for that missile barrage that he throws down from his ship, he would have been toast. She would have killed all of them. She is so immensely powerful. And I think we're only going to see more of that in Doctor Strange 2 now that she's unleashed and she is the Scarlet Witch from the X-Men comics, But yeah, no, let's talk about Vision / White Vision.
Oh, I love that scene. I love that scene. That was so cool. I just that Theseus ship, isn't it? That theory of here's a ship and it's in a museum as the original wood rots. When you replace it, once you've replaced all of the planks, is it still the same original ship? Like, and then the other Vision, it's almost like the made up Vision that is kind of a copy of what we knew as Vision is kind of lecturing and educating this kind of reborn childlike version of Vision. And I just love that. And then the whole time they're like spinning around, following each other, and like I thought it was epic. So cool. The script and the imagery was, I think, really important in that basically Vision was like, hang on a second, you're fighting me, why? And then the other guy was like, I don't know. The Vision 2, the White Vision, was like, I don't know.
Vision
And
2.
yeah, they then kind of only in a very particular way, they commune together and they talk together, and then we obviously got that point where Vision, the kind of Wanda's vision, the kind of copy of the Vision that died, essentially imparts / unlocks his memories within his own body, and essentially says to the White Vision, the kind of reincarnate version, you know who you are. But then it then fights back, doesn't it? The color that we started to see is removed, it's disappeared, and the other Vision, like the White Vision, kind of realizes, actually, yeah, I am part of you, but I'm also this new version, and I don't know what I am. And then, like,
It's like
shoots off, flies off,
when- when Gandalf comes back in Lord of the Rings. It's like that. It's white.
Exactly, yeah.
Vision the White.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
we go.
Love it.
I am Vision the White, and I come back to you now at the turn of the tide.
Actually, you know what? That's quite a strong similarity, because obviously
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Gandalf the Grey sacrificed himself to save everyone
Mhm.
else, which is what Vision tried to do, obviously, in Infinity
There you
War.
go. The MCU has copied Tolkien. You heard it here
There we go.
first.
100%. There's a headline right there.
Yeah, that's the title of the episode. Sorted.
I think well, obviously White Vision does have quite a history in the comic books, and I think we're definitely going to see more of him. If you're not familiar, there was a storyline in the comic books called the Vision Quest, in which the Vision was kidnapped by a government agent. Wink, wink. Director Hayward, bit of a nod there, and his body was completely torn apart and rebuilt. And when Scarlet Witch and the other West Coast Avengers, the California Avengers, which is a
That's
thing,
not a thing.
yeah, it is a thing in the
God's
comics, yeah. Led by Hawkeye. When they track Vision down, they only find a heartless machine that just attacks them. And eventually the Avengers do manage to rebuild him, but he keeps his white body form. And basically the matrix that made him the man that Scarlet Witch loves is pretty much gone. And Vision is this blank slate. So there's that moment in the comics where he says, "You're not my wife. These are not my children. I am the Vision, but I don't love you." And it was great to see that come to life. And can I just say, the costume design for this episode, White Vision and Scarlet Witch's new outfit, it's some of the
Yeah.
best superhero costumes I've ever seen.
all the way through the series, the costumes are mint.
Mm-hmm.
On the Halloween one, I think I saw somewhere that it was like the original designs of their characters in the comics.
Yeah.
That's what they were wearing, which is
Absolutely.
that sort of stuff is always cool
Mm-hmm.
to see.
The children do come back in the comic books. They get reincarnated, but they don't come back as Scarlet Witch's children.
I think knowing that, like, from what you told me, and then if you take the line that she said, the last thing she said to them was, "Thank you for choosing me as your mother."
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that kind of, yes, in her magic, they're no longer in the
Mm-hmm.
world, but actually are they? Because obviously we've got the end scene credit where we hear their voices again. But actually, the fact that she said, "Thank you for choosing me," there's kind of, I think there was very much a case of, okay, those characters are very much, they're there to be exploited now going forward, and I think we're going to see them again. And I swear we're going to see them in Doctor Strange. I'd be shocked if we don't, because I think we saw her let go of Vision. We saw that, and I think she's had the grief over Vision now, and I think we've seen her process that, and I think you could probably say overcome it. I think the next thing that's really going to mess her up is her children. And she's dead. She's not even over Pietro's death, really. That was kind of a topic they raised and then parked out the back, really. So I think her children are going to be, like I said, I think they could be, the main reason why she's the villain going forward for the next foreseeable future.
I agree, and I think I've just thought about this on the spot now. That sort of, I had a bit of a light bulb moment in my head in that I do think Mephisto will be involved in some way. I've thought for sure he was going to be the big bad guy behind WandaVision. Mephisto is this other dimensional demon who in the comic books allows Wanda to have her children and then comes back to claim them years later and causes the chaos. But now that I've seen the end of WandaVision and especially the post-credit scene with Wanda experimenting with the Darkhold, it wouldn't surprise me that the voices of her children that she hears while experimenting with that book, maybe she doesn't go to Mephisto through Agatha. Maybe she just goes to him directly, and he says, "I can bring your children back. I can give them a soul. You had the chaos magic. You're the powerful one. You can bring them to life. I will give them a soul." So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some of that.
Was there a soul stone? Was that an Infinity Stone?
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
So I know at the end of Endgame, Captain America goes
back in time to replace the stones. Yes.
But what actually happens to them? Because I was confused about that bit.
The Soul Stone. What does happen to the Soul Stone actually?
Because obviously the one in Vision's head is still with Vision, is it?
Well, so what happened there is essentially the writers of Endgame explained that there's a lot of different timelines that are going on.
Yeah.
In Endgame, and when Captain America, so obviously the mainstream MCU universe is at stake because of Thanos, and in that universe, Thanos gathers that universe's Infinity Stones, uses them to kill half of the universe, then destroys them. So the Avengers don't have any Infinity Stones to bring everyone back. So they travel back in time to a point in which they did exist.
Yeah.
But as the Sorcerer Supreme explains to the Hulk, I forget her name, the Ancient One, as she explains to the Hulk, just going back in time and taking those Infinity Stones basically makes them not your universe's stones anymore.
It's like Back to the Future, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's how they explain it. It can't happen.
Can't happen.
Yeah.
So essentially, that creates a split reality, and obviously the Thanos that is at the end of Endgame is not the same Thanos from Infinity War. The one from Infinity War is dead; he was decapitated, and the one from Endgame is the one who travels forward from the past, from 2014 to 2023 to fight the Avengers. And I guess Captain America goes back to those exact same times to restore those branching universes. There's been a lot of plot hole discussion, like on Reddit and things like that, where people are saying, "Well, that doesn't really make too much sense." But
does he destroy the stones or not?
He Captain America doesn't destroy it. No, he just he takes them straight back to where they were, so that realities don't
split.
Don't split. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but the thing is though, I think so. This is my theory for Loki, because obviously there's a Loki spin-off show.
There is, yeah.
What Captain America, what basically the Avengers, by taking other realities, Infinity Stones, just for that blink of an eye, I think that's going to be where quite a few of these shows originate from. I think they're going to be, well, we can give you this storyline because it was made possible by this, but it's not actually the main storyline, if that makes sense.
So Loki in the main MCU continuity, Loki is dead. His neck was broken by Thanos.
Yeah.
But because they then traveled back to 2012 and it went wrong, Loki then escaped from that time. And eventually the event in that universe, then the events of Thor: The Dark World and Thor: Ragnarok and Infinity War never happened.
For that. I'm so excited for that, because I really love Asgard, and I thought I mean, as much as I love Ragnarok, and I think Ragnarok is possibly one of my favorite MCU films. Period.
Never happens, pretty much.
In Loki's timeline, in the Loki TV series that we're going to get, it never happened, and I can't wait, because hopefully we get to see more of Asgard and more of that kind of relationship, because there's so much lore and stuff that they can go into with that, and we only really got like a tiny glimpse of it, and then obviously Asgard was kaputted big time. So yeah, that's going to be really exciting.
There was another branch reality as well that broke off because of Endgame, because Thanos came forward in time from 2014. Essentially, that means that Guardians of the Galaxy 2 never happened.
Yeah, is it Gamora? Because there's that scene where she doesn't know who Quill is, isn't it?
Because she's come from a different time, and now that's a branch reality. So now there are essentially 3 different MCU realities. obviously the main one, and then one in which Thanos just disappears one day and never comes back, and neither does Gamora. So she never meets the Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014. So that never happens. And then there's another reality in which Loki escaped with the Space Stone, and now he's on his travels. Fun fact about the trailer for Loki: you can actually see a stained glass window with Mephisto on it in the trailer for Loki. I'm telling you, he's coming. Mark my words. I said it here first.
Yeah, and then obviously I think, I mean, I think we've definitely proven, and I think it's very very much well stated fact. You just can't predict what they're going to do because I think the only people that know what's going to happen are the writers at this point. Because we could throw so many theories out there with the fact that we're now going to deal with the multiverses. Are they going to mesh the storylines back together to make one kind of continual like storyline? So will Loki come back in, be part of the main thing? With that, or will they just keep them like we have a film in one universe, we have another film in another like reality timeline? It's going to be interesting to see how they juggle it and what they do. And to be honest, I wouldn't really be bothered which way they go. I don't think I'd be let down if they closed off the separate ones.
I think they'll try to keep it as one, just because
Yeah,
not everyone's a diehard fan and isn't going to
exactly.
understand that. Like,
I'd say it's 80-20 to put
And
it back.
I think their ultimate
Yeah.
plan is to also retcon the original Spider-Man trilogy and have that link in, and also retcon the X-Men Fox films and try and link them into. I think they just have this ultimate plan to have this big universe, and but I also think that poses a slight issue in that Disney and Marvel Studios have this annoying habit of not letting things die.
Yeah.
And I'm specifically referencing Vision in that regard. His death in Infinity War was very touching and very emotional. It was an ultimate sacrifice. And then, to have time rewound and then he gets killed again by Thanos. The guy's been through enough. Let him be. And whilst I really thought that the finale for WandaVision was touching and it was very it was a great end to their storyline together, their romantic storyline. Just having the knowledge that White Vision was out there with all his memories restored, it really tarnished that moment, because it's essentially Vision's not dead now. Again, he's alive again for the second time. And I really liked White Vision. Like I said, we had a chat about it a minute ago. I think it's going to be great. Obviously, I don't want Vision to die. I would love him back, and obviously he will be back now in this new form, as he has been in the comics. But from a story point of view and from a film point of view, that emotional catharsis in retrospect is kind of tarnished a bit.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think there's always going to be this question, because you look at the comics have gone over the same source material so many times, haven't they? Like, is there a character that's not died in the comics, and then basically all the writers had to do was basically say, oh, new timeline, new universe, we can do a completely
They've done that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
the thing is for the core cast of superheroes that basically Marvel originally way back in 2012 are like, right, Iron Man's going to fund a lot of it. These are the heroes we're going to do. We've kind of exhausted the storyline, so there's got to be obviously knock-on effects of Endgame. Captain America is no longer Captain America. He retired. Iron Man, Tony Stark, is no longer Iron Man because he died. He sacrificed himself. There's so many. We've kind of hit the end of the life cycle, so they've now got. It's now the question of how do you rejuvenate to keep it going for the next decade? Because realistically, that's what commercially we know it's going to be going for another decade at least, because it's still popular, it still sells, it still makes so much money. So I think it's this kind of, we're going to have to accept that main characters like Vision, like Iron Man, like all the Captain America, we're going to see new versions, and I think we just have to kind of take their deaths, as it were, and their previous lives with with a pinch of salt and say, yeah, that was amazing and that was beautiful. Now what's new with it? And kind of, that evolution. I think it's only natural because of the comics and because of the source material. I think it would have been a waste just to say, oh, he's dead, he's full dead. That the comics give us that larger than life ability to just play with it. Literally, it's different universes. We can do what we want with them. So yeah, I get what you mean, and it is sad, and especially when you think about it, WandaVision. I mean, it's literally set in the week following Endgame. It's like a matter of days. So when you think about it a bit about it like that, you're like, oh my god, it kind of sucks what they've done to Vision, and kind of like, we wanted he was such this noble character, and now it's like we don't know what he is. But yeah, I think it's just natural. I think it had to happen at some point, and I don't actually mind it being at this point.
I agree, and I think just to wrap up, I think WandaVision has felt more like a Marvel adaptation than anything else thus far, mainly because it's a TV series and it's a serial. And, the comics would come out monthly, and they would be so short. Before the story even started, you'd be turning the page, and it would be the last one. But also, I think we need to take into consideration that it has come from source material, a source material which is incredibly large. And I think Ben, you're kind of right in the regard that the Marvel universe the cinematic universe is getting so big that also we don't need to know everything instantly. We don't need to know answers to things. There are characters in the comic books that haven't actually featured in issues for years. I can think of a handful straight away. There's been times where questions haven't been answered in the comic books for years as well. After the House of M storyline, Wanda went missing for about 10 years. And
what, like real time or like?
Yeah, real time. Yeah, they just didn't write her for that long. Because they thought, she went out with a bang, she killed 95% of the mutant population. She's gone into hiding. And then she resurfaces 10 years later as the wife of Doctor Doom.
Oh well. Cool.
Yeah, and so I think, whilst it is annoying that the return of this White Vision tarnished the emotional impact, I think I agree with you, Ben, in that we don't need to know where he's gone or what he's doing straight away. And I think the WandaVision was a great adaptation of some source material. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing where they go next. And for the first time in my very nerdy life, I actually have no clue as to which way they're going to go.
That's a great way to put it.
I think so. And I think we should wrap up there. But guys, it's been great to talk about WandaVision. I could talk about the MCU for days. I can feel my voice is getting tired just talking about it now. But hey, listen, thanks for listening at home. If you are a fan of the MCU, leave us a comment, see if you want us to check out some more Marvel films. We'll be happy to do that, some kind of festival maybe in the future. Charlie, what are we looking at next week?
So we're going to look at a documentary by Adam Curtis called Hypernormalization.
Okay. That will be a week on Monday. This episode is coming out just for WandaVision, but we will be back to our regular broadcasting day next week on Monday. Do drop us a like, hit the notification bell, and subscribe to us. Check us out on Spotify as well and Google Podcasts. This has been Joe, Charlie, and Ben from the Shoal Weekly Podcast. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to us. Thanks for listening.